Hello and welcome back to the S.H.E Gallery Show. Thank you for being with us today. You are with us live with DJ Nonstop. Thank you for being with us, DJ Nonstop.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
And you are live with us. Today we're still celebrating the 50 years of hip-hop. And DJ Nonstop is an original member from ABC who this year celebrates 40 years. ABC, the first graffiti crew here in Chicago, co-founded by our friend and member B-Boy B.
Yes.
Much love to B-Boy B and Take Two, who were with us, part of Family Resemblance, the evolution of Chicago-style graffiti. Much love to Flash ABC, who has been with us numerous of times, as well as Trickster, of course, the Godfather, who is also a member of ABC. Now, let's talk to you about how you joined ABC, but we'll back up a little bit. Your first element of hip-hop that you actually got into was breakdancing,
Yes.
correct? Okay.
That was my first.
Let's talk about all of your elements, starting with breaking, going into graffiti.
Okay, so breaking was just something myself and a couple friends in the neighborhood, you know, we did. We enjoyed dancing, and it was something that we started doing, and then it gradually turned into graffiti. It was like, you know, it was just a natural evolution for us. We like to tag and we like to dance, so it was, I don't know, kind of went hand in hand.
Mm-hmm. So from breakdancing, then you started tagging around the neighborhood with your friend, Rick 06?
Rick 06. We moved to Logan. My family had moved to Logan Square we lived in Humboldt Park, but at the time I was living in near home in Kimball Avenue and like Bloomingdale, where the tracks were. So that's where we started tagging. But then when I moved to Logan Square, it just became like something we did on a daily basis. We used to tag on a bus. And my dad had a gym in Logan Square, and we would hang out there, and we'd stand a couple doors down. And every time the Milwaukee bus would stop, I'd tag Gizmo, he'd tag Rick 06, and then after a couple, I don't know, I could say a couple weeks because it seems like that now, but after a certain amount of time, the buses would come by and we'd be like, oh, our names are already there. So we decided to graduate from tagging and get some paint. There was a paint store like, I don't know, like 4 or 5 doors down from my dad's gym. Walked into the paint store, grabbed a couple colors, walked to the counter. The guy behind the counter is like, hey, you guys do graffiti? And we got kind of nervous, like, oh, is he a cop or something? And he goes, no, don't worry, I do graffiti too. And I'm like, yeah, really? I said, what's your name? He's like, I'm Flash. And our mouths opened. Flash ABC, I said. And Rick's like, what? And he's like, yeah. He's like, what's your name? And I said, I call myself Gizmo. And he's like, oh, so you must be Rick 06. And we were in shock. So they knew who we were. Flash said we were just talking about you guys, invited us to a meeting, and we became ABC. That's when it started.
What year was that?
It had to be late 83 going into 84, because right before I started DJing.
So we're talking about brand new graffiti crew, first crew here ever in Chicago, and you joined.
Yeah, we got pulled right in. It was great.
Right in.
It was great.
And then you did that, and then eventually you ended up getting arrested.
Yeah. We went to a paint store or an art supply store up in I don't remember where it was. We were on the train. Rick 06 and myself, we were taking the train. We were coming from the city and going towards Logan Square to get off at Logan. And we had bought like the paint things that they use to do the edges of the window before you paint, like just to scrape off. I filled it up with ink. I was trying to make my own. I wasn't satisfied with Magnums and Pilots apparently, and I tried to make a really big one. And I started tagging it, started dripping immediately because it was too wet. And then I wrote Too Drippy. And as I wrote Too Drippy on the window, Rick was facing me. It was the one seat on the train that goes the opposite direction. I'm facing him and I hear a voice say, you're under arrest. Get up and put your hands up. And I look at him because I'm like, is this a joke? And he sinks in his seat. And I'm like, oh my God, I get up and it was a cop. And ironically, the most famous angry cop in Logan Square's name was Arcio. Everybody who lives in Logan knows. That's who I got arrested by. So he grabs me by my jacket, puts his hand in there a couple times, lifts me up and says, how convenient. The police station's the next exit. It was California. He walks me in the whole time. He's carrying me like that. Rick's following us. And he's telling Rick to go home. Rick's like, no. And Rick followed me all the way in, waited until my mom came. Right. So yeah, that was my one experience.
And staying a friend, looking out for each other.
Yeah.
So at this time, graffiti was fairly new. We talked to B-Boy B quite often about what that was like, how the cops didn't really know what to do with the youth, with people that were getting caught doing graffiti, because it was like you could only associate it to gangs.
Right.
Then you got into music. Your uncle, right? Your uncle was an influence to music making, to DJing?
No, my uncle wasn't an influence. My uncle used to play a lot of music. He was 10 years older than me. He used to take me to the movies. He would take, I hung out when he was like an older brother, because I didn't have an older brother. And I got a lot of music influence from him because he would play like, Earth, Wind, and Fire. He had everything that was hot at the time. My uncle had it. My uncle was like the coolest guy on the planet. He knew martial arts. He was built, and he was just the nicest guy. So, and he played with action figures, and I was a kid. So, everything I enjoyed, my uncle enjoyed. So he was an influence. My mother was also an influence, cleaning the house. Puerto Rican mom, cleaning the house on the weekend. So music was always there. I was always into dancing, and when I was breakdancing, I could never find music that would. I found parts of music that worked for us, but I never could find like a whole mix from anyone that was everything we wanted. So I said I was going to be a DJ and make our tapes. That was how that started.
All right. So you were like, this doesn't exist yet. I guess I got to do it.
Well, the Hot Mix 5 were out, but like some of the songs that, like they would play all the songs we liked, but in my head, I heard the songs, okay, take this out and put these together, take that out, and that would be a good mixtape. You know what I mean? Or make a show just for us to practice. I wanted a really good mix, so that's how it started for me.
And it was your uncle that baptized you with the name DJ Nonstop?
No, it was a friend.
Oh, it was a friend.
Yeah, so
okay.
My dad's gym was in Logan Square. It was Mario's gym. It was very popular in the 80s. And there was a guy there that was a friend of mine that was a little older than me. And we borrowed some equipment because he said he wanted to DJ, and so did I. So we go to his house. His girlfriend's pregnant at the time, so I start practicing in the headphones. They fall asleep. They wake back up in the morning, and I'm still practicing in the headphones. We go to the gym. Tells my dad, I'm calling your son Mario Nonstop Nieves because he stayed up all night nonstop. And the name stuck. I was like, oh, that's perfect.
Beautiful. So you've been practicing, you've been a DJ for a very long time now. And you were a DJ with K7?
Yes.
K7 and TKA?
It started with TKA. We did a song, Maria. Well, I knew them. I met them before that. But when they did the song Maria, I went to New York and I did cuts on the song and did backgrounds on the song. So that was like kind of my first introduction to it. K7 was the K from TKA, told me he was going solo, said he wanted me to be his DJ, and I loved the guy. He's still one of my closest friends, like a brother to me. And I was like, absolutely, I'll be your DJ. And, and we went platinum.
Very cool.
So.
All right, and you kept at it, and obviously you were very dedicated. Obviously you started making a name for yourself, and then eventually you ended up meeting DMX at Joe's on Wheat Street, and this is approximately 2003.
Yes.
And then since then you became his DJ up until DMX passed away.
Yes.
So now we're moving into commercial hip hop. We've been talking a lot about underground hip hop. and conserving the importance of the hip-hop message that sometimes gets lost with commercial hip-hop. But DMX, even though he may not be preaching like the 5%ers do, he's still preaching something that's very real.
Yeah.
And to the thugs and to the streets. And you said that he was reaching people in the streets that wouldn't necessarily go to church.
Absolutely.
But he was still preaching the gospel as the 5%ers do. Can you talk to us about this experience with meeting DMX, meeting him, becoming his DJ? And as you do that, Imani, can you please show us the images that our guest shared with us?
I was DJing a show at Joe's on Wheat Street. X was going to do a couple performances. He was going to do a few songs. So a mutual friend of ours, Kato, was like, hey, can you DJ for X? And I was like, yeah. He told me what songs. I DJ'd for him. Everything went smooth. I knew how to highlight the rapper because I did a lot of open mic stuff in the 90s. And the next day he gave me a phone call. He was calling me from Kato's phone. I didn't know who was talking to me. He was talking so fast. Like, I just heard, I felt an energy. I felt a vibe. And I'm like, who is this? And he's like, it's X, it's DMX. I'm like, whoa, what's up, X? And he's like, yo, I want to talk to you. Can you meet me? Kato's going to get on the phone and give you, tell you where we're at. I went to meet him and he told me, no, he's real simple. He said, I've never worked with you in my life, but I felt an energy with you. I don't have a DJ right now and I have a lot of shows. I want to offer you a job if you'll work with me. And I said, absolutely. And didn't know what he expected of me. First couple shows, I'm kind of just playing the songs and watching him. He's running out of breath. And I'm like, man, I got to do more, And it was, so we had like 3 or 4 shows before the tour overseas. Went overseas, we had 2 days off. I stayed in the hotel, never left the room, wrote down all the lyrics, highlighted the parts I was gonna say. First show we did on that tour, my voice came out. And I was finishing his sentences and acting out and, doing all the, whatever manner, hands I could use. So he talked about money, anything I could do to make the show seem a little more energetic. And after that, it was just, there was no separating us. He really enjoyed it. He went crazy after the show. He's like, oh my God, that's what I'm talking about. That's what I felt. And, and it worked. And, I was this DJ for almost 18 years. And it was the best, it was good and bad times, but I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world.
Beautiful. Something that you shared with me about DMX that none of us would ever know is how close he was with God and how intuitive he was.
Yes.
You couldn't get him to change his mind if he felt like if he had a premonition or something, right? Like he was very close to God. And you say that he was sort of like a prophet, that he would stop and pray with the homeless. Can you talk to us about what that was like?
I'm totally convinced that he is a prophet. Absolutely convinced. Because no matter what his flaws were, the one thing that was constant in his life was his faith. He never ate a meal, no matter what time of day it was, without praying. No matter where we were, he never stopped praying. We did a show in Beirut, Lebanon during a New Year, and they told him not to say Jesus Christ at all, because it was all a Muslim country. And he stuck to his guns, and he said his prayer the way he said it, and he said what he said, and we had to get out of there. But he lived it. It was real. It wasn't fake. And he spoke to the streets. You got somebody his lyrical content is on the level of street level. He's talking to the streets and everything. At the end of his album, every single album, he had a prayer. At the end of every show, he had a prayer. Mm-hmm. So I've seen the thugs, the biggest, scariest thugs, cry with tears in their eyes when he did the prayer or when he did Slippin'. He always touched a lot of people in a different way. And, I feel like if God was going to put somebody on this earth to speak to the streets, then that's the guy he put, because he was flawed. He wasn't perfect. So people related to him. There's a lot of people that had the same problems he had, but they listened to him because he was telling them something from the flawed life he had. He was speaking, and it's easier to communicate with the streets when you are from the streets. Mm-hmm. A lot of thugs don't get up in the morning on Sunday to go to church. Some do, God bless them. A lot of them don't. But when they come to that hip hop show or they're listening to that album, they're still getting the word, and it was legit. So I feel like he was a prophet. I feel like his purpose was to do what he did, and when it was his time to go to heaven, he was gone, Mm-hmm. And his time was out.
So perhaps he knew. Perhaps he knew, and he was dedicating so much of himself to the streets and to the people. We've been talking about hip hop, the 5% nation that has worked to enlighten the 85% nation. I don't believe that DMX was this type of hip hop artist that was more of an underground artist, but he was able to reach a different audience, the gangsta audience, yep. Which is kind of like the streets where they're still very much infested by the gangs.
Yeah.
Graffiti was also graffiti writers were also trying to escape gangs. So gangs are heavy, but the reason that gangs exist is because of society.
Right.
Gangs trying to take care of each other. I know I've mentioned many times, I grew up with gangbangers, I grew up with gangs, we were just kids, and at the end of the day, we're all just trying to survive.
Absolutely.
I keep saying that, just trying to survive. And DMX, as much money as he had, he wasn't flauing his money, right? Or he had it, but he was always sharing his money. Yeah. Maybe he was too much of a giver.
Yeah. Or repurposing. Maybe not paying child support, but, homeless people were getting it. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So
And then a church getting 10% of his earnings?
Yeah, that was his way. Always gave 10%. I was there. I seen it. We went to many churches. You know, that's who he was. He'd get phone calls. They'd pray on the phone with him. He'd send money. So that was his way. It was his money, the way he wanted to use it, his faith. You know, nobody could change that. It wasn't, you know, anybody's business. That's just the way he was.
Yeah. So faith, spirituality. We've been talking about this season when we're talking about hip hop and this fifth element of knowledge and wisdom. And we've been talking about spirituality and God coming at forefront. So when we're talking about DMX fighting his demons, I believe that because he was doing something so good that was going to affect people in a very positive way, then there was negativity. Right. Always trying to come in. And eventually DMX was defeated, right? There were a lot of... Maybe. Or like he said, many times when we would disagree on the things, the problems he had, maybe it was his time. Maybe that's exactly... He told me, because I was never a yes man. I loved X, and we got into some pretty heated arguments about disagreements about drugs and whatnot. But he told me, a few times, he said, when it's my time, it's my time. It's already been preordained. Nothing I do is going to change that. This is how I live my life, and I believe that I will be in a better place. And when he passed away, that's the one thing that gave me comfort, because he said it to me, and I remember it. It's like I'm trying to lecture him. I was only 8 months older than him, and he was so smart, but like I tried to lecture him about other things, because I don't know what it feels like to have drug problems, you know what I mean? I never had issues like that. So I tried to lecture him, and that's, and he would tell me how he felt, and I believed him. So when he passed away, it was like, okay, this was his time. Yeah. So, you could look at it both ways. He could say, he killed himself, or you can say, he ran his life the way he wanted, and it was his time to go. He left us with some masterpieces, Mm-hmm. It wasn't like he didn't leave an impact. He did. He touched everybody, so. And we mentioned that there were people that were passing him, like, let's say, the pipe, or passing him the drugs that were perhaps not caring for his well-being.
Yeah.
So the industry, getting caught up with that industry, it's so important to stay true to yourself.
The industry is about control. If you have a talent and they can control you, and control sounds like it just sounds like everything. Mm-hmm. If you have the slightest drug problem and the industry wants to control your thoughts, they will make sure those drugs are available so that you're not in the right mind when the business comes along. And that's how they try to keep you a slave, more or less. If they keep you high, they can do all the business for you, and then they're never going to do the business for you. They're doing it for themselves, and it's been done, to X and everybody else. Mm-hmm. The only people that survive are the ones that are on top of their business. Any loophole, I call it a loophole. Any loophole in your life that they can attack to get to you, they're going to use it, because people don't. I'm not saying everybody, but in this industry, I've seen the grimiest of the grimiest things done. My mom raised me better than that. I'll never be okay with being around people like that. And that's why I have a handful of friends after 18 years from the DMX side. I don't have hundreds of friends, I have a handful, because those were the real ones.
Yeah, many of us don't really have many real friends.
Nope.
And we only have a few minutes, but I wanted to touch that last image that we were looking at. After DMX passed away, you had a moment where you were, of course, processing, and you had this experience here. Do you want to talk to us quickly about that?
When I was driving downtown to pay some bills, and my birthday was in 2 days, and I was driving, and I just went on social media, and I just kept seeing a bunch of like DMs, like just started popping up, almost like spam. I closed my phone. And I'm like, I'm not dealing with that right now. I was relaxing. And then somebody called me, and it was a friend of mine and ex's who works with Redman and Method Man. She's from Germany. Her name's S.H.E. As soon as I saw her name, I got goosebumps. Because now I'm, okay, hold on, what is this? I pick up the phone, and the first thing out of her mouth is, she's crying, and she says, Nan, is it true? I said, I gotta go. I already knew. Made a phone call. Happened last night. X had a heart attack. I said, the prognosis was basically only thing that could save him is prayers. So now you're telling me the man that I've been on stage with for 17, almost 18 years had a heart attack, and the only thing that's gonna save him is prayer. I'm with that. I want to pray. I stop at this park. I open my phone and it's DM after DM. So I take a picture of the water and I put prayer hands in the story so that people can stop, reaching out to me and they could just pray. And then the sun was shining, so I turned around to take a picture of the sun, and I couldn't see through my lens because it was so bright, but I wanted to get the sun in the middle of my picture. However it worked out, I took the picture, and as soon as I looked down at the picture, I saw that X in the sky. And I hadn't cried up until that moment, and then I just burst into tears because I felt like that was a shout out from God saying he's coming home. And I'll never believe anything different than that, because it was an X right in the sky, right in front of me, right when I found out, which was depressing on itself.
And
because
you were getting DMs.
Yeah,
DM,
right, exactly. And my brother passed away. My younger brother passed away in 2019, and he was the one who used to preach X to me. So it was just one of those moments where it was like, man, I lost another brother. And he wasn't dead yet, but because my brother was gone, I had been ready to celebrate my birthday, because now, when my younger brother passes, every year for me is like, thank you, God, I'm still here. And thinking X might pass away on my birthday was tough, officially, and it lasted about a week, but it was tough, but I got my closure. That's what I feel like, Everybody looks for a sign, I got mine immediately. And that picture is forever ingrained in my head, the way it happened. Everything that led up to it, and it means the world to me because of it. Because that's all you can ask for. It's let me know you're okay. Let me know things are okay. Mm-hmm. And I felt like it was like God, like X is coming home. It could have been X. It could have been X saying, now stop. I'm good. But it brought back all the things he said to me. How it wasn't. God, it's in God's hands no matter what it is. So it gave me comfort.
Mm-hmm. That's beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing all of this insight. Shortly after DMX passed away, you were concerned about work. Immediately you received a phone call and work continues. So blessings for that. You still continue. You and your beautiful wife and all of your children just coming back from New York, celebrating hip hop. Such a beautiful thing. Just thank you for all of your years, for your dedication to your music.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, and
it's still going. The name. It's nonstop. It's not gonna end. It's not gonna end tomorrow. I'll do it till I die.
ABC. If you want to leave the guest with a final message, and I thank you guys. We'll see you next week. I'm bringing my homie from my growing up, Izzy TDM, next week. We'll share more on a veteran story from somebody that was also incarcerated, and a lot more. So another member from Chicago, South Side. What would you like to share with the audience?
Just born and raised in Chicago. It makes me the proudest man in the world to travel and represent the city. That's the city I love. It's all over my arm. Logan Square, my neighborhood. I shout out to ABC. Thank you for taking this 13-year-old kid and keeping him safe on the streets. Everybody mattered to me. Everybody is the reason I am who I am, and I really appreciate it. So thank you.
Thank you, guys. Peace.
Peace.